Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a short little build video in my 5-gallon tank. So this one's 40 centimeters by 25 by 25. I've already got a black background on and I've got a small piece of plastic down for the base. This is just to protect the bottom of the tank in case I drop something. So that's pretty much the basic stuff out of the way so we can start building. So for the hardscape in this build today, we're going to be using some grey slate. I got this stuff really cheap from a local landscaping place, so we're going to see how it looks in the aquarium. I know a lot of people use it, but this is going to be my first time. Not all of the stuff is exactly grey. There's a few different other color tones here, but that adds to the vibe and the texture, so we're going to roll with it. So as well as our little stack of grey slate here, we've also got a piece of vine wood. So this is grapevine. It's still got a little bit of bark on it here and there. I'm going to attempt to leave this on and see how it goes. I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for tannins, but we'll see. I'm not entirely convinced of the layout yet. Normally I'd go with something more like a triangle style, but the way this piece of wood's going to be going in, it's going to look a little bit odd here on the right hand side, but we'll see how it goes. The main reason I'm not too phased is because I want to put a little heater in the back corner here. So obviously I've got a Betta Fish, so you need a heater. So I'm going to try and hide that a little bit. I don't want to put it on the back as usual, so we're going to try and squeeze it in on the side. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too long for this tank. The previous one I had was a lot shorter, but this one's about 5 centimeters longer, so it won't actually fit straight up and down. So we're going to have it on a bit of an angle. So that's another reason I'm deciding to do it this way. Now that I've got the hardscape exactly how I want it, or at least as good as I can get it for now, we're going to start doing our soil. So as always, going to be using AQUASOIL. This stuff is the same stuff I had in this tank originally. So it's about a year old, so it is a little bit degraded, but it's going to be plenty for what we're going to be using, and it should help with some algae issues. So there'll be less nutrients ending up in the water column. This time, rather than using any sort of bags to put this stuff in or anything, we're just going to be putting it straight into the tank. And at the moment here, I'm just filling it in along the back. So this is where we're going to be planting our stem plants into. And then we can put our nice big piece of hardscape back on top. This is basically just to fill in any of the gaps because I do have a Betta Fish and they're notorious for getting into any sort of a crack. So making sure I fill in as many holes as possible. Then getting the rest of the hardscape in on afterwards should help with any potential issues of him getting stuck. Moving on to the planting process. For this one, I'm going to be using all the same plants I had in my last build. So I'll leave a list in the description if you want to check that one out. But there's a lot of different ones in there. It's going to be similar to a jungle style again. If you haven't seen the previous build for this tank, I'll leave a link in the description for that as well. It lasted about a year before I took it down. So definitely worth checking it out. It was looking pretty nice, but it was definitely time for something new. You would have seen bits and pieces of it in the introduction anyway. So with that build, I originally had a Monte Carlo carpet down and I want to have the same thing in this tank. So I did cheat a little bit and I lifted that Monte Carlo carpet up with about an inch of AQUASOIL and I've laid that down in this build as well. So you'll see that a little bit later on in the planting process. There are a few things I learned doing this, so it is successful if you do it the right way. So the most important thing is to get at least an inch of soil. If you get enough dirt underneath and you place it down into your new build, you won't have problems with it floating up. However, far. I had half or maybe 75% of it come up quite well, and the other half I didn't get enough soil, so when I laid it down it got a lot of bubbles under it and floated to the surface. So that's something to be aware of. I ended up having to pull that out and replant it as little patches just to avoid the bubbles. But the other half that I got a lot more soil underneath worked really well. So you can transplant the carpet. You just need to make sure you get a lot of the soil with it. So it has now been 62 days since I last filled up the tank and where the video just finished. So we're going to go have a look through and see how things have gone. So far, everything's looking really good, and we'll go over some of the issues I had, some of the things that worked really well, and some of the things I'd like to do in the future. So as you can see, we'll start with the Monte Carlo carpet. This stuff here is coming along really nice. The left-hand side here is where I had some of the issues with the floating. So I'll just mark on the screen here roughly where it started to have problems. So this section I had to replant in little pockets. The rest of it though, that worked really well, stuck down perfectly, and it's probably just about due for its first trim. There is a little patch here at the front that needs some work, but that should grow in soon enough. Not very big, but you can see right now there's some snails grouped in there. As for the rest of the tank, we have quite a lot of growth here. So I've trimmed a lot of this stuff probably 3 or 4 times now. So the red stems at the back, they're going crazy. I've trimmed those about 3 times. The pinnator feeder is probably the biggest issue at the moment. It's sort of stagnating. It has a few pinholes in it, so I think it's lacking some phosphates. I'm going to end up putting down some root tabs underneath that. It is growing as an epiphyte at the moment, so it doesn't have access to the soil, so that's probably part of the issue as well. You'll also notice I've got a couple of rocks in the center now. I originally had Monte Carlo in there, but it kept floating up because it didn't really have enough to plant into. So I've just placed some rocks on there for now, and I'll probably start adding some phoenix moss or something to that. And I've got a little piece of phoenix moss on wood here. That's sort of an artificial thing at the moment. It looks okay in the tank, but that's where I'm just propagating my phoenix moss. So eventually I'll spread that to the rest of the wood. So along some of the sticks, along the rest of the hardscape, and we'll get it to start looking nice and covered in moss. You'll also notice my Betta swimming around. He's looking a little bit rugged at the moment. He had some fin rot issues. I don't know why, because the tank's pretty good. Hasn't really had any spikes with nutrients or anything in the water. So I did wait a little while before adding him. He's on the mend though, but I do think some of his problems is that he gets a little bit excited when he sees shrimp darting off, and he swims after them as hard as he can, and then he injures his tail. So kind of just part of owning a longfin Betta. He's not bored or anything. He's got plenty to do in here. Apart from him, there are quite a few shrimp in here. This is my cull tank. So most of the shrimp you see swimming around here are the wild type, which I think look really good here. So apart from all of that, this tank is also running a really cheap light. I'll leave a link in the description for that as well. So as we already went through at the start of this video, this tank is basically a super low tech. There's no CO2, super cheap light, really cheap filter, and a heater. So the heater's there essentially just for the Betta fish. The filter, I could take it out now, but I do like to have it in there. It just helps with a little bit of circulation, and I know my Betta fish likes to occasionally swim along in the current. There's not much of it, but he likes to go and play up in there from time to time, so I'm just leaving that in. But outside of that, definitely no CO2. Everything's growing without CO2, though I have started dosing after the first 3 weeks. I'm just dosing macronutrients because the soil, as I said, was about a year old, so it does need a little bit of a boost. And I was hoping that the pinnator feeder would get a little bit better, but it's not working so much. So I'm definitely going to have to add some root tabs for that. So there's a crypt I've added here and some Brazilian pennywort in the back corner. I think that's what it is. But yeah, that's just because it wasn't getting too much light in that back corner there. So I've just placed that in there. The Monte Carlo is starting to spread up in there, but I don't think it's going to make it. So the pennywort's going to cover that back corner. I think that covers pretty much everything. So if you have any questions, don't forget to ask in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video. Cheers, everyone.